Good evening. I'd like to call to order this hearing of the Council of the Borough of Gettysburg. This is CDBG Public Hearing Number 1. For the sake of the record, we need to state the names of everybody in attendance. We have Mayor Freeling, members Carr, Sanders, Berger, myself, Member Bales, and we have Member Lawson dialing in remotely. We have Solicitor Harold Eastman with us, Secretary Stull, Manager Gable, Planning Officer Mr. Whitmore. I see Mr. Frankel from the Gettysburg Times. We have community media here filming, and then I do see one member of the public. Sir, could you state your name for the record?
Randy Wallet, Christ Lutheran.
Randy, I'm sorry?
Wallet.
Randy Wallet. Randy Wallet. All right. I will remind members that the purpose of this hearing is for us to receive public comment on possible uses for the CDBG monies. This is not a forum for us to express our opinions. We will have a second hearing on these monies as well, just over a month from tonight on August 26th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m., also in this room. I'll hand this over now to Mr. Gable and Whitmore.
I will just announce the allotment that would be coming to Gettysburg Borough through HUD. We are a direct entitlement community for CDBG, which is an acronym standing for Community Development Block Grant Program. Gettysburg's direct entitlement for fiscal year 2024 is $127,011. With that, I'll turn it over to Planning Director Whitmore to discuss the process for CDBG, and then we can open it up to public comment.
Good evening. This is a federal program. It's the United States Housing and Urban Development Department. It gets funneled through the state's Department of Community Economic Development departments to jurisdictions throughout the Commonwealth. The funds are generally limited in scope to what they can be used for, but at the same time, there is broad discretion on community projects. Historically, the borough has utilized these funds, at least most recently, for improvements related to sidewalk, curb cuts at intersections to meet ADA, to better our ADA system of sidewalks. Other than that, this is a yearly process. We work with the county's Office of Planning and Development to execute and administer this grant. In working with the county, it is a process that we began back in January to actually formulate ideas on how to move forward. As some of these projects, there can be a time delay in actually receiving the funds and executing a project. So we're mindful of that moving forward.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. At this point, we will open the floor up to public comment. Is there any public comment on the use of the CDBG funds for the next fiscal year? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned. Of the Borough Council of Gettysburg for July 22nd, 2024. We have one announcement today. An executive session will be conducted immediately following the adjournment of this evening's work session meeting, consistent with Section 708A1 and Section 708A5 of the Sunshine Act for the following purposes. 1. To provide information and to discuss matters of employment and the terms and conditions of employment of current and prospective employees. And 2, to review and discuss matters of borough business which, if conducted in public, could lead to the disclosure of information or matters of confidentiality protected by law. We do not have a special presentation this evening, so that takes us to public comment. This section of public comment is restricted to items appearing on tonight's agenda. So those issues are the sign ordinance revisions, the parking regulations involving 2 specific churches, the physical agility amendments to proposed for the civil service regulations, and a mutual aid agreement with the Gettysburg National Military Park. If you have other issues you'd like to speak on, we need you to save that for the end of the meeting. If you'd like to speak now, please use the podium, and please state your name and address of residence, and please make sure you've also signed in at the door.
Randy Wallet. I represent Christ Lutheran Church. I'm the church council president, and we're located at 30 Chambersburg Street in Gettysburg. First, I want to thank everybody who's been working with us these many months trying to come up with some resolution on the meters and the parking in front of Christ Lutheran Church. For years, Christ Lutheran has been bagging the meters on Sunday mornings. And I know there's a proposal about signage out there and as a compromise, but I know the business have expressed a great deal of opposition to the signage. What I'm here to propose is something maybe as a compromise. You know, we are different. We're a church that wants to use it only on Sundays, only in the morning, only for restricted hours on a restricted number of meters, parking meters. So very, very specific. It's not any other days of the week. It's not any other hours of the day. So it's very, very limited in what would be proposing. What I was thinking about was a solution that, you know, that maybe we can reach an agreement on. The borough doesn't have enough parking personnel. The borough doesn't have enough police officers to come out there and bag meters every Sunday morning and take the bags off. So the borough has a difficult issue with the bagging proposal. The signs were proposed. The businesses have a problem with the signs. They don't like the signs. They think that'll cause confusion, et cetera. And we need some parking spots for our handicap and mobile limited members of the congregation. What I was thinking, you know, the borough signs many agreements with vendors, with companies, with folks to provide services. Why can't Christ Lutheran and the borough reach an agreement on these 8 meters for Sunday mornings only, for those limited hours, no other time, and we, through an agreement, can help the borough, and we can put the bags on Sunday morning and then take them off at the end of the church services. It would relieve the borough of worrying about putting bags on and off. It would get us our parking spots. It would get rid of the signs that the businesses don't like. And, you know, I just think, and you could put a penalty in there. If we don't live up to it, if the church puts bags out any other times on any other meters, we don't take the bags off, penalize us. We're okay with that. But I just think that this could be a solution that everyone wins. You know, the borough doesn't have that problem of how do we get bags on there. We get parking places, and the businesses don't have to worry about signs on those meters. Just something for the council to consider.
Thank you, sir. Public comment. All right, last chance, public comment on tonight's agenda. All right, thank you. We're going to move on. Our first order of business tonight is the sign ordinance revisions. Mr. Whitmore.
Good evening. I've provided this evening a copy of the presentation I'm about to provide. At the last workshop meeting, I indicated I was going to be providing you all with information for rendering, showing what current signage already exists and what 50 square feet of signage would look like in certain instances. I was able to produce, I think, 3 very good examples of the pitfalls as it relates to accounting for sign area. So I'll just get right into it. Starting right at the beginning, we have the O-Man, located at 1 Baltimore Street. This is their existing signage. You can see that there's a small awning sign. In addition, they're utilizing what would be an A-frame or portable sign in the public right-of-way. Staff was able to, utilizing Google Earth, establish a potential for additional signage on the site. Removing the portable sign, you can see that mostly the awning would be the entire sign area at 50 square feet. It would be substantially larger than what's currently there, but it should show that the building itself is relatively, well, pretty much entirely unaffected by the signage, as it is just located specifically on the awning. Moving forward, 16 Baltimore Street. This is the location of Varsity Barber Shop. Their existing signage is located. They do have 2 poles that we do not necessarily have to include as signage. The unique thing about Varsity Barber Shop is it's located at an intersection with a public right-of-way. As it is now, they're able to put up 50 square feet of signage. They're clearly not utilizing that much signage. Proposed rendering, as shown here, you can see that for a smaller space, you end up with the potential for quite a bit of signage. It might be considered excessive. Staff in this has added 4 signs. The one small sign would be just what's identified as number 4, just to make up for the 50 square feet for conversational purposes. Really good example, though, 27 Steinway Avenue, Gettysburg Souvenirs and Gifts. Utilizing the Google data, it appears that this sign could just be duplicated. So the end result, yes, it would impact the building facade. As you can see, depending on the placement, they'd probably be able to get away with having additional signage and not actually impact the windows, but it is something that is a potential. And that's all to say that in looking at these scenarios, the signage itself, generally at 50 square feet, can provide business information while still maintaining the historic integrity of these properties, all 3 of them being located in the historic district. Since June, staff has contacted quite a few businesses in the historic district. The comments received generally are related to existing signage, making sure that the current signage would be permitted. A good example was 1863. The proprietors contacted me. Looking at their site, they have compliant signage now. That's a very large building, so the 50 square feet would change. There were a few other comments that we received, specifically regarding existing signage, just in terms of grandfathering and how that would work. The other, I guess we had long conversations with business owner regarding the ability to have additional signage in the historic district. The current proposal from staff is that signage be limited to 50 square feet. If desired, it could be amended for the historic district to allow for additional area based on the 1 square foot for every 1 linear foot of either right-of-way frontage, public accessibility frontage, however we want to calculate that. But that would then allow for additional sign area beyond 50 square feet in the historic district. We had previously made a suggestion to have a certificate of appropriateness process for the additional square footage for signage. The Historic Architecture Review Board was not very receptive to that proposal, and it appeared that council was not necessarily receptive to then approving a certificate of appropriateness related to signage. Finally, we had a comment from Councilperson Sanders regarding consolidating the electric signs. Basically, there's been some confusion regarding internally illuminated, what that means in the context of where the sign is. So what we're going to be doing is providing then consolidation of all the illuminated and I guess the other types of sign issues that can occur, so like that involve electric components. Reviewing other historic district standards, it's kind of scattershot. We were able to pull up information for Frederick, the city of Frederick in Maryland, Saratoga Springs in New York, York, Pennsylvania, Leesburg, Virginia, and Alexandria, Virginia. And looking at these, you can see Leesburg Old and Historic District in Leesburg is extremely restrictive. 6 square feet for individual signs and 9 square feet for a directory sign. Conversely, the York Historic District allows for 100 square feet of area. For those properties that are on a corner lot, they're able to go up to 150 square feet. In most all of these instances, though, if the signage requires a certificate of appropriateness from the historic board is given the ability to limit the amount of signage. That's only present, though, in the city of Frederick, and with the, I believe it was Saratoga Springs as well. So even you could have restrictive signage and still make it more restrictive. That becomes challenging naturally, but it is in effect in other jurisdictions. Finally, then Alexandria, they utilize a ratio concept as well. It would be less than our current 1-to-1 standard. They use a 0.75 square feet for every 1 linear foot of building frontage. And then finally, what staff is asking for is guidance regarding this area standard, and then the issue with internally illuminated signs or electric signs in the historic district. So based on the comments we've received, I feel confident saying that the 50 square feet is a good number, and there's a rationale that seems to have existed to get to that point now. If council would like to provide additional signage opportunities in the historic district, that's when option C, allowing for that 1-to-1 ratio in those limited instances where a building may be a corner lot or have multiple pedestrian viewing opportunities. But other than that, that's where I end my presentation, and I guess just to get some general comment from council.
So I trust everybody had a chance to review the notes in the current draft. Did anybody have any questions or things they noticed that they wanted to discuss?
Yes. I'll start at the very back of your packet. Letter D, 50 square feet of signage per building side where signage is to be located. Is that saying that 50 square feet of signage per building side, but meaning if they have more than one side, such as Oman, which clearly does on the square, that 50 square feet on front facade and 50 square feet on the other facade?
So realistically, that standard would allow for up to 200 square feet on a four-sided building that's completely visible or detached. That scenario, I believe, is in, I'd have to go back to this one.
Similar to Varsity 16 Baltimore?
Well, no, it was a method to allow for signage. It was Alexandria. They utilized that side of the building standard. It's something that council we can move forward with that. Would be much, I wouldn't say much more, but it would present opportunities for additional signage beyond what's currently permitted.
Can I ask a follow-up question there? When we say side, are we also talking, I mean, is that the same word as frontage or facade? I would like to ask it a specific example, right? Pardon me. For example, the Epley building has 3 businesses in it that has frontage on 3 roads, counting an alley. So does it get 50 feet per side? Conversely, Fresh Boutique has 3 exposed sides, but one of the sides is exposed to the neighboring property, not to a road or an alley of any kind. So does that count as a side? Where is staff drawing that line?
So in the scenario with every, so the definitions, not definition, sorry, let me start again. Where that suggestion was taken from, it literally is every side. We could reduce it to that, so that it's 50 square feet per side of the building that's viewable from a public right-of-way or a gathering place, to allow for instances where it may be public, but it's not necessarily a right-of-way, so to speak. But that's something that we can do, but what was proposed specifically in Alexandria was every single side of a building, even if it's pointing at a brick wall, could have a sign. It's just that limitation is 50 square feet per wall that sign is located.
Sorry to interrupt, please.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Yeah, I mean, and then if we do go that route, I mean, that would be up to the business if they wanted to put a sign that faces a brick wall. However, I would argue that there are many alleys that are technically pedestrian alleys that might be a public right-of-way or might not be, but they're used as public right-of-ways. And they are visible sometimes from passersby, whether they're in a vehicle on a front road or not. I have a question, though, about, I mean, for example, since it's in the packet, oh man, you showed one, but they do have another side facing Lincoln Square, and they do have another sign on there. I think it's brilliant marketing to utilize those sides. Varsity, on your page 6 of your, or slide 6, I'm probably just confused on the 1, 2, 3, and 4. Are you showing an example that a sign could be on the alley, or why are there 3 signs on the front?
That's just showing the 50 square foot, what that area would look like on that front facade. They're eligible to have.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
There, gotcha. Because that front facade there on Baltimore Street,
And then the alleyway.
what they currently have is not 50 square feet
That's
per
correct.
their facade. But your slide on number 6 is showing that they technically could have that,
Yes,
per the ordinance as written.
yes.
And I'm suggesting that they could also have one on the alley side.
And staff would recommend that to the applicant to make sure that their signage that they're putting up is actually working.
Sure.
This would be, preferably from an aesthetic standpoint, it would make sense to have a projecting signs that can be read from the street as opposed to having to look straight at the building. But that's where we work with the applicants, just to make sure that they're aware of the opportunities
Sure.
they have for signage. But we
Absolutely.
can't make people put signage up.
But as we have heard on this very topic from public comment, is a lot of times the signage in our downtown small businesses isn't necessarily always about the person that's traveling in a car. It is very much about the pedestrians, and we want to be pedestrian-friendly town, and a lot of the pedestrians, local and tourists, want to see these small business signs. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity there with some of our alleys. For example, Racehorse Alley, while the back of those businesses faces a parking garage, a lot of our tourists park in said parking garage, and they walk through that alley, through that right-of-way, between Gallery 30 and the hotel complex to get to York Street. And
just
there
wanna
could be lots of,
Clarify something,
there.
that is not an alley. It's not.
the pedestrian right-of-way,
There's no
sorry.
such thing as a pedestrian alley, so.
It's a pedestrian right-of-way,
Yep.
yeah, and lots of people walk it every day.
Sure.
That, I think, answers my questions that I had for you, and thank you for putting this packet together.
Yeah, this is very helpful. Does anybody else have any concerns or anything that came out of the revision in your packet today?
Yeah, I would like to say, I agree with Mr. Carr as far as the 50 feet per facade goes. I think you've heard me say that before. I think that we have to utilize the spaces that we can. I'm still not a huge fan of the just blanketed 50-foot for any size building. I think more of a ratio would be better, but I wouldn't be opposed to the 50 square foot per facade, if that's what the rest of council also wanted to move forward with. I couldn't find the wording in here for the grandfathering procedures. Is that written into this?
The procedures are just the term grandfathering. So we wouldn't, I mean, when we would be doing enforcement, the enforcement provisions are established. So we'd be enforcing that you have signage you put in that's not grandfathered, or you've placed signage that it does not have a permit. That's how it would be enforced. It wouldn't be like a grandfathered effect, if so to speak, if that makes sense.
Where is that in here?
It should be near the end. I'd have to.
I'm sorry, can I jump in there?
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. So all I'm seeing is allow for signage. There it is. My computer kept dying. Is allow for signage in existence to be grandfathered. But I would hope that if we were to allow anything to be grandfathered, it would be something that's in the existing ordinance, because there are some signs that are not following the existing ordinance, and I would not like to grandfather them.
And they would not be, because they would not be legally pre-existing.
Thank you.
What about,
It's illegal signs.
so we talked about moving the flag heights up.
Yes.
That would not be a part of the grandfathered signage.
Well, no, because the sign is the flag in that case, and you're just relocating it on the structure. I don't think we would be in a position where we're going to seek enforcement for non-compliant signage in that instance. Generally, when it comes to the flags, though, they do have a lifespan. So that issue, it'll be something that we're going to have to deal with most likely for a few years, and then hopefully it'll have resolved for the majority of businesses that utilize flags, and it would be new businesses coming in doing education with the business owner or property manager to make sure they're aware of I believe it's the 7-foot height requirement for flags.
I'm not following you. We would not be enforcing the flag height?
We would. It's just for what would happen is for those properties that have a flag that's non-conforming now, moving it wouldn't necessitate, they wouldn't have a non-conformity if they moved it into compliance.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right. Was there anything in the draft that you needed our attention on?
Well, it sounds like I have some direction to finalize the area requirement, which was, I guess, the last piece. Other than that, the internally illuminated signs, that was something.
I'm sorry, let me back you up there for a second. You're asking first, have we answered your question about the total permitted sign area in the historic district? I don't feel like we have.
Oh, well, I would, okay. So I guess I was seeking just general consensus. It sounded that 50 square feet of signage per building side where signage is to be located that's viewable from a public area.
Okay. Mr. Bales, you said you'd be amenable to that. Other feelings, please?
Yeah, I was going to say, excuse me, it seems that between what Peter had mentioned and Chad had mentioned, it seems like a hybrid between A and D, if I'm not mistaken. Something like of that nature?
Yes.
Okay. I'm amenable to that. I think especially if we are specifying in the ordinance that we are, addressing each side of the building and making sure that.
Well, so is it a hybrid?
that
Is there a ratio employed in this scenario or no?
It's not.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be, I was incorrect with saying, it's more akin to D and C, but without the ratio. So you'd be able to have more than 50 square feet, but it's going to be 50 per side visible from the
Oh,
public.
I follow you. Yeah, so we know, we lose the 50-foot maximum per building, but we gain 50 square feet per side.
Yeah.
And then did I also see in, I believe in the draft, that we would be then expanding the limitation for businesses that do house multiple, or buildings that house multiple businesses? Again, the Epley building has 3 businesses in it and something like 300, linear feet of frontage. So would all 3 businesses get 50 square feet in this draft?
They would all automatically get 50 square feet. They would, depending on, there's going to be, I believe in that scenario, there's going to be one business that's not going to have as much opportunity for signage given the size of the building available to it, but the others would have additional signage opportunity. Additionally, in those instances, that's when you, with multi-tenant buildings, you have an opportunity for a directory sign or other placemaking sign for the entire complex.
Okay. Member Lawson, is that all acceptable to you?
Yes, that's fine.
All right. And nobody has any issues with that they want to keep talking about? All right, I think we've arrived there. I've never had to clear my throat so much as when we have these microphones. All right, so then the next question is the permitting of electric or internally illuminated signs in the historic district. So currently, we do not do this, is that correct?
Current code does not permit internally illuminated signs. That's not to say they don't exist. There are a few instances where there is signage that would not meet the current criteria for internally illuminated, and I'm not sure if it was installed legally. That'd be something we'd have to do some historic research on those instances. A good example, though, is a lot of Steinware Avenue. There are a number of restaurant businesses that employ internally illuminated signage.
Is it possible some of that signage predates the existing ordinance?
It is possible. That's why we would have to do the research individually for each parcel that's affected. Another thing to be mindful, though, of when we're looking at some of the signage, there are some provisions well, not for internally illuminated, sorry. That was a trail of thought that we don't need to take. So, yeah.
We're discussing the exterior ones, not the interior ones, correct?
That's correct. So you would be able to have signage that, like an open sign or neon signs on the inside of the building, and they would not require a permit and would be permitted by right.
So we're talking more about like the AutoZone sign, right? Like sort of a box with fluorescent tubes inside that shine through the signage. Yeah, we don't have I don't think we have really anything like that downtown. Maybe something on Steinware.
The only one that exists, to my knowledge, in the downtown is the Starbucks sign.
I've really never noticed it lit, and I go there a lot, but during the day, because they usually close at 6 p.m.
Interesting.
What time does the, marquee is different than, marquee's a marquee, never mind. But I noticed that goes out too sometimes. Yeah, I don't think we have any internally.
Isn't the one at the Sunoco? Like the,
No, maybe.
Oh. Yes. Yes. And that's relatively recent ownership too, so that would definitely be new. So, thoughts on internally lit signs in the historic district?
I remember, I believe it was Mr. Witt that came and spoke at public comment about them and how Steinware used to look many years before I came to Gettysburg. I would not want a lot of that to happen again. Again, to clarify, we're not talking about inside the building, we're talking about exterior of the building, but illuminated from within the sign.
Right.
Like a Sunoco sign lit up from the
Right.
inside. I don't have any favor of that, especially downtown in the historic district. Not that we don't need some more lighting in downtown, but I think there's other ways to light downtown.
Sure. Anyone else? In favor or opposed?
in the past, when it came to illuminated signs, people did not object to an open sign in the window. What no one wanted was what Chad just related to, T-shirts, or souvenirs. That was the type of illuminated sign that no one wanted. So if we could somehow work into the wording that not advertising wares, but advertising openness was acceptable.
The way we do that with the proposed draft is to have the signage on the interior of the structure. So open signs are generally not rated for exterior use. They're the electrical components, when they get wet, they can short out. And it's something that there are exterior-based open signs, but yeah, they're not generally seen in historic districts, and the ones that are seen are behind glass.
And
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I always associate the illuminated open signs with like gas stations or mini marts and something like that, as opposed to like retail shops, especially in historic districts.
Yep. All right. Opinions? Just to remind everybody, we're not necessarily talking about open signs in this particular moment. We're talking about the internally illuminated signage,
Right.
like the AutoZone store or
the McDonald's arches.
exactly, or the Sunoco station, yes. I'm not a super big fan of that stuff in the historic district. I don't know. I'm pretty comfortable with the way the ordinance reads currently on that.
Yeah, I would not be in favor of more exterior internally lit signage.
All right, so I think we're all pretty comfortable with where that is currently. All right. Any other open issues for you on this draft?
No, this is great. We should be able to have a draft that you all can vote on in the very near future. Thank you.
Very cool.
I'm sorry, when did you say, John, that you'd have a draft?
We should be able to have a draft available for the August 12th meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So that'll be in our packets at some point the week before. I do encourage everybody to give that a thorough read before we vote on it. Did anybody else have any final comments on that before we move on?
Just because it was brought up, even though it wasn't really what Mr. Whitmore was looking for, those internal, inside the building signs, how it is currently written, how far from the window does it have to be? Or are we not governing that because it's inside someone's private property?
The proposal would not require any distances. Once so an example of a window sign that would be regulated would be a window cling on the exterior of the structure.
On the exterior?
Yeah.
But if it were something like what's been mentioned tonight,
Yep.
like the open signs, neon signs or whatever, on the inside of the building, inside the window, is there anything in the ordinance about how far away from the window it has to be?
Not in the proposed draft. The only way that would be regulated is if it were to somehow, the glazing would be something reviewed. If a sign is incorporated into the glazing or something like that, that would be reviewed by HARB.
Gotcha.
But nothing in the sign ordinance as proposed.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Whitmore. So that takes us to our open question about parking. Ms. Fissel.
Good evening. Go ahead, Charles.
No, I just want to make sure you're talking about.
Oh. Thank you. I'm not sure what parts of this you wanted to discuss. I believe just the church parking.
Correct. That's correct, yes.
I didn't have anything further on the church parking, but
All right, so this seems to be an amended version of the sign from what we were presented before. It did not previously reference disability.
we could come up with any number of signs that will
Sure.
achieve, I mean, I don't know that the specific language of the sign is at the discussion point. It's, do you want to do it or
Right.
not?
Okay. All right, discussion.
Well, I would disagree. I would definitely say it's a part of the discussion. The text, I think, is very important to a sign if we're going to go with that. But we can start the conversation with if we're
Right,
going to go with it.
we don't know if you want to do it.
I think it's going to, I mean, it may sway the vote of what actually it says.
All right.
And not that we're voting tonight, but we can talk about first if we're going to do it or not.
I actually have a proposal.
Please.
I appreciate Mr. Wallet speaking tonight. I was, a few months ago, pretty frustrated when I found out that we did take this service away from the churches, and I think I would love to go back to that, but it doesn't seem that staff recommendation, or I don't think council wants to do that. I did just talk to the police chief, Rob Glennie, and I'm trying to figure out how to do this without signs. He proposed that if staff could put out bags Saturday night at 8 o'clock after enforcement's done, he would be amenable for the police to take the bags off on Sunday.
So that would not actually solve any of the current situation. We already have staff to take them off at 1 p.m. We have parking staff. The question is who puts them on and when.
Okay?
I'm very sensitive to the fact that the police have a outsized burden in public safety and that they cannot commit 100% of the time to doing this because they might be busy with something else.
Absolutely, and I agree. So I'd rather have, I mean, if staff could do it, then we,
Sure.
can you explain why staff could not do?
They would be, no, they can. They'd be doing it at 8 p.m. on Saturday nights. And the bags would stay up till 1 p.m. the following day. So that is an option. Another option is we instruct the police that they need to take care of this responsibility, and the two churches involved would have to understand that there could be an incident where the police cannot do that, and there might be occasionally a day we miss, and it would be much like the last 3 months have been for you, right? Not ideal, but it could happen. I don't know the frequency or regularity with which the department would be occupied from 8 p.m. Saturday to 7 a.m. Sunday, but it could happen. So there could theoretically be a day they just couldn't do it. The ideal solution is that they would do this at some point after 2 a.m., but if they can't, they can't. So that's another scenario. And then the third option we have here is the proposed compromise of the signage. And the fourth option is we do absolutely nothing.
Can I just make a quick comment?
Yes.
Sorry. Actually, those bags would have to go on if being placed by parking staff. It would be about 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. So that would then interfere with businesses for sure.
Well, I have about 12 businesses on that block that say that these signs would interfere with businesses for sure 24/7, where this bag compromise that Mr. Berger is suggesting would interfere with only Saturday night, Sunday morning.
So nobody, but if you're putting the bags on, nobody can park there after 7 p.m. when those bags are placed.
Correct. If you're putting the signs on, then you have a chance that somebody understands that that sign is just meant for Sundays.
So
You also have a chance that somebody doesn't understand and they're parked there, or they're not parking there when they could park there to go to one of those businesses.
So that's 8 meters on Chambersburg Street that would be out of commission from 7 p.m. on, and all of those bars and restaurants would pay for that. Their
Rather than a
customers would be
sign that
negatively
would be
impacted.
on there 24/7.
Right. Charles,
Why would it have to be 7 o'clock?
because
That's when
That's
we
when
have
they have
staffing
staff.
on Saturdays.
Couldn't they do it at 8 o'clock?
I wouldn't have staff available to do that at 8 o'clock.
Not under our current staffing levels, no. We could stretch it, But I mean, that's always been the point of discussion here. We could do things like this. The question is, if someone's on vacation, how does it work? If someone calls in sick, how does it work?
Right.
And in those instances, we would have to rely on the police department because they're staffed 24/7. Parking department is not.
Charles, can you bring up the file in the folder that says existing PennDOT signage?
Is that the picture you sent?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a picture right in front of Christ Lutheran, and here we have a pole with PennDOT signage as well as local ordinance signage for no parking 2 to 6. So that sign is up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and people still park there. We have over 5,000 signs in a 1 square mile borough that govern parking. I'm really not convinced that 6 more signs is going to really negatively impact the parking experience downtown.
I have businesses that say otherwise, and I think otherwise. And I respect your opinion, and I respect everybody on council. And I respect all of our public comment, and I appreciate it. But I also think that we don't need another sign downtown, especially one that's completely not enforceable whatsoever.
Right, but neither are the bags that they've been using for decades.
No, I'm not suggesting that they use those bags.
Our intent here is not to enforce. Our intent here is to create a courtesy so that people are free to worship. At the urging of both you and some public comment we received via email, I did go talk to some of those businesses on Chambersburg Street. I represent the folks at 24 Chambersburg Street, so I probably cannot be objective there, so I'll reserve my opinions. But I did talk to the Thaddeus Stevens Museum, and he said while initially he had been approached and thought it was a terrible idea, once I explained the legal conundrum we were actually in, he said, oh, the compromise seems reasonable and this would not negatively impact the museum goer's experience. The business directly next to him, the framed art store, said nobody had talked to them and they have absolutely no problem with these signs.
Okay. Well, it's not a contest, but
Sure.
it's not.
No,
But I
it's
talked
not, it's
to
not a
Wild-
contest, but,
not.
but these are the, directly adjacent businesses who would be most drastically impacted by these signs, and they don't seem to
I
have an
think
issue.
every small business on the first block of Chambersburg Street would be impacted. Wild Root, Gettysburger, Hideout, Sign of the Buck, National Soldier Factory, Lord Nelson's Gallery, Gettysburg Custom Framing, Mama Ventura's, A&A, and Fresh Boutique. I went further just a little bit to Food 101, Gary Owen, Ragged Edge. They've all signed that petition. I don't think that they want signs. They say they don't want signs. They also said that they had no issue whatsoever with the way the church has been doing it for 2 decades. I understand that we can't do that anymore. I'm proposing a compromise of the borough bags. Follow the system that's already in place.
Can you be clearer what it is you're proposing?
That Christ Lutheran Church or any church, because we're not going to put this in this ordinance, a specific church name, are we?
No, this actually applies to multiple locations,
locations. It
but we
could be
seem to
any-
be only be talking about one.
It could be any church, though, that would do this if we were to do,
That's correct.
it could be any church. I'm proposing that the church fill out the paperwork with the parking department, requesting the borough bags at a certain day and time of when they want them. For example, Sundays, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. is when they want them. And I'm suggesting that then the borough can decide, the borough can look at the ordinance and say, well, we don't charge during that time. Yes, we can put those bags on and we can give it to you for free because we're not losing any income, but staff has to put them on. And I hear what you're saying. I think we're all trying to find a compromise, but I think a compromise of the borough, legal borough bags on there Saturday night and Sunday morning is more of a compromise than more signage that's completely not enforceable whatsoever, that's going to be there 24/7, that might affect parking revenue and might affect small businesses. I just don't see the logic in these signs at all.
I support the bags along the same lines as what Mr. Carr is saying. I think we got to be flexible. If we lose a half an hour on a Saturday night, I'm okay with that. Of course, the police, you guys are busy, you guys have the toughest job. And if you were busy, we wouldn't be worried about the bags. So, but at the same time, I think we took this away from churches. We have people that need to be taken care of on Sunday morning. So, and I think the bags are the best way to do it.
I would agree with Mr. Carr and Mr. Berger. I would be on board with either the borough bagging them before they go, or if the police can do it, say 12 to 7 o'clock, that's 7 hours you have in the night there. If they can get to it, great. If something comes up and they can't, then we would understand.
Well, it's not up to us to understand. It'd be up to the churches to understand.
Yeah, sure.
I need to hear from everybody else, please.
So, go ahead.
Are you sure?
It's your time.
Yeah, I've always been in favor of the meter bags. I just knew there was a concern about the practicality of having staff put them on. But certainly if we have parking staff that could put them on Saturday night, I think that's a fair compromise. And, if they're able to remove them on time, then I think it's fair.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, then we are resolved. Any other issues on this matter? Okay, let's move on to the physical agility amendments. Chief Glennie could not be with us tonight, so he has asked both Sergeants Pruitt and Evans to be with us tonight, and I would like to take a moment and say welcome to both of you. It's good to see you here at these meetings, and particularly Sergeant Evans, I want to say welcome and congratulations, and thank you for pursuing your recent promotion, and we're very happy to have you here today. If you guys wouldn't mind speaking at the podium so that we can all hear, that'd be helpful.
While they're coming up, I'll just read, there is a policy briefing summary which was written by myself and Chief Glennie. To give context for the public, I'll just read the request that is asked of council consideration. Without providing specific studies and/or data here, it is widely accepted that policing as a profession is suffering from recruitment and retention challenges nationwide. This is also true statewide and locally. Accordingly, any incentives and/or inducements to enter and/or remain in the law enforcement profession could logically be argued to assist in recruiting qualified officers to the police force. Conversations with council have broached this recruitment issue or challenge in the past. Police department staff have discussed the matter internally on many occasions, and in each of those discussions, the subject of physical agility testing and the hiring process is brought into the discussion. As you are all aware, the borough must hire full-time police officers through the civil service process. That process is outlined in borough state law and borough ordinance, which is attached to this policy briefing summary as Exhibit 1. Both require a physical agility test that is job-related and consistent with business necessity. Our current physical agility test, the Cooper test, listed as Exhibit 2, has been identified by the police department as an impediment to recruitment. The police department is not asking the Borough Council to amend the Borough Civil Service regulations, but rather acknowledge that the use of the Cooper test outlined below is an impediment to our recruiting effort. The department's request is that the Civil Service Commission use another physical agility test to help attract new officer candidates to the borough's police department who are already Act 120 certified and familiar with the department. And with that, I will turn it over to Sergeant Pruitt and Sergeant Evans.
Good evening. I believe the chief has provided everybody with an information packet that includes the breakdown of both tests, what our preference would be, and I believe he answered some questions. So mainly we're just here to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Sure. From your personal points of view, do you have reservations about the Cooper test, particularly as it pertains to the hiring of already Act 120 certified officers?
So if we're speaking of officers that are already certified, I believe they would be more amenable to the law fit work test versus the Cooper fit test. In reality, if you're talking about an officer that's already certified, he's already tested into the academy, tested out of the academy, so they've already passed the test that we are utilizing currently. With the fit test, I think it's more work applicable. It applies more to what your job actually is as a police officer. None of us are running a mile and a half to chase anyone or to go anywhere. We have cars, we will use those cars. We have radios, we will use those radios. I think it's a detriment to recruiting if you tell a certified officer, you have to run a mile and a half. You have to do push-ups, you have to do sit-ups, because they've already taken that test. And, you know, I believe the law fit test is more applicable and it makes it more friendly for recruiting. That's for my experience, and to officers that I have spoken to. They would prefer the law fit test versus the Cooper fit test.
Sergeant Evans?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything he said. The problem for us is, I believe the last time we had an opening for a full-time police officer, certified police officer, I don't think we had anybody apply that was certified already. So
Right.
this is more job-specific and appeals more to applicants. So that's why I'd be in favor of this.
Are either of these tests done fully geared, or are these in exercise clothes?
They would be in exercise clothes.
What is the typical weight you would carry when you are geared?
No, I can't answer that. I never weighed myself with all this stuff on.
I think it's approximately 25 pounds.
Okay. And so this is a bit of an evolution from the first conversation we had with the chief about this a couple weeks ago. He had been proposing just eliminating the Cooper test for already certified officers transferring in. So this would be a bit of an evolution in that position. So you're saying you would still be advocating for physical fitness requirements regardless of previous certification, just not, and if I'm understanding correctly, it's the mile and a half.
Yeah, that's right. It's the mile and a half, it's the 300-meter run, it's the push-ups and the sit-ups. It's just, you know, nobody really wants to do that anymore once they're already a certified police officer. The law fit test still requires you to show physical fitness. It's just a different test.
Yeah, I'm looking at the obstacle course, and it is more relatable what you do every day. Or you run 20 yards, drag a victim 5 yards, run, identify suspects, climbing through windows, crawling under things, over
Right.
things. So it does seem a better fit.
I think so.
Have we lost any candidates to the Cooper test?
So we have lost candidates that actually took the test and were not able to pass the test, and we have also lost applicants just in the lack of interest of taking the Cooper test.
Right.
Do you think that this lowers our standards or higher them, or is just changing the standards to fit more what the job requires?
I think you're changing the standard to fit more with the job requirement.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it lowers the standard at all. I mean, this is job-specific stuff. So, like the Master Sergeant said, I mean, running a mile and a half, we're just not doing that. Everybody agrees that police officers should, you know, be fit and be able to do their jobs, but this is just more job-specific.
Okay. When we first started having this discussion with the chief, we did ask him to contact other, you know, similarly sized municipalities around the Commonwealth to see if there is a dominant trend. And my recollection, and you were there, please correct me if I'm wrong, my recollection was there was no conclusive trend, right? Some municipalities were holding on to it, some never really implemented it, some were backing off from it. There was not really, like, you know, a suggested best practice as it's emerging through, you know, similar municipalities. Is that a fair representation, you think?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And also, I think we talked about this, that it evens the playing ground for applicants.
In what regard?
That you'll get more people applying and give more diversity in applications.
Okay. And just so everybody has this background too, also in the folder you'll see an example of the Cooper test, and it's a chart, and you'll see that it is scaled for both gender and age, and this is a test that has been sort of bench tested itself over a period of years. So it sort of acknowledges that there are different, muscle mass concentrations as we age and based on gender. So the standard that is established does change throughout one's life. Now, it is worth noting that to be Act 120 certified in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to go through the academy, you do still have to take the Cooper exam twice, once upon entry and once upon leaving. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right, so if we were to amend our civil service regulations and go with a different test that had been properly vetted, young officers just coming out of the academy would still have to make these basic physical qualifications. But there's a hypothetical situation, I'll say, where, perhaps there are established, certified older officers who either don't want to or couldn't do the 1.5 miles, who would gladly work with the Gettysburg Police Department in a full-time capacity, except for we have what is, sort of an impediment to hiring here in this Cooper test. So that's what we need to consider here, is if we want to pursue a different testing standard or stick with what we have. Eliminating physical fitness requirements is not recommended by anybody. I did have a chance to speak with 2 of the 3 members of the Civil Service Commission. They're very insistent that we must keep physical fitness standards in place, as was our labor attorney. So the only question...
A law fit test. And I was pretty impressed with the research and the information that was provided by the studies that were done by George Mason. And so I think it would be a good idea. The VA law fit test seems to be more amenable to, as you said, hiring or officers that are looking to get hired. My question is, has the City of Lancaster provided any feedback about how they use this test once they have implemented it, how they've used it to in their recruitment process? I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, how it's more favorable to recruits, but I was wondering if they had any feedback to sort of demonstrate for us how we could use it.
So I think that's a question we would have to reach back out to them and ask.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. That was it.
Have either of you ever taken the VA law fit test?
I have not, no.
No.
And do you know, is there a facility that we would use for it, or would we have to construct this obstacle course, or how would we do that?
I believe we would reach out to the college, to their health and fitness staff for assistance there.
Oh, interesting.
I know Lancaster City, I think they did build a course, so the chief and I and Sergeant Brewer are gonna go out there at some point and take a look at it and see if that's something we could actually, build here ourselves, maybe with the assistance of the college, and/or maybe utilize Lancaster City's course.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Any other questions or concerns?
Did you say you still had to reach out to the college? You've not yet reached out to them?
Correct. Yeah, we have not yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
I'm familiar with the ropes course they offer out at the college, but that's the only physical fitness course that I'm familiar with out there.
I think in the chief's letter, he said he reached out already.
I think Lancaster said that they would welcome them to come there.
So they would have something then that they could
check
put
it
in
out.
place
Um,
to replicate this.
and so the metric on this obstacle course, is it just that you can complete the course, or is it timed, or is there a standard?
There's a time standard, and we have chosen the time standard of 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Oh.
And that's applicable for everybody, whether it's gender or age, that's the standard. Unlike the Cooper test, as you can see up on the board, that, it's defined by age, the times is by your age and gender. This is just the one standard across the board.
And the firing of the weapon, is that at a target, or is that just to show that you can do it with both hands even after physical
Just to
exertion?
show that you can complete it with both hands.
Got it,
Right.
got it.
And along with that, earlier you mentioned that it's usually done in exercise gear, not all full gear? Or was that the previous?
I think both tests are just exercise
Just
gear
exercise
tests.
Yeah.
gear. But in the work environment, you would clearly be in all your gear.
That's right.
But yeah, that, I'm in favor of the Lawfit obstacle course, but I think it, as they said, it's a standard across the board.
Anything to add? No?
No, as long as there is some testing, because I do believe the Borough Code provisions require that there be some
Correct.
physical testing required for now.
Yes, the Borough Code does require it, and then we are empowered to set those standards through the Civil Service Code. Okay. Any other questions? All right, so I think the only thing we have to do is make sure that it's a vetted test that our labor attorneys and the union are comfortable with, and then
It's not a union matter.
not, oh, fair. Then our labor attorneys, and then this could possibly be up for a vote next month.
If that's the council's wishes, sure.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing a consensus.
Okay.
Thank you both, sergeants.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you both
Thank
being
you.
here tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we have the mutual aid agreement with the military park.
So this is really more of an informational item, not so much of a policy discussion. The borough has several mutual aid agreements with other agencies and municipalities throughout the area. We have a mutual aid agreement with Cumberland Township, for example. Why these exist is if there is some type of emergency that requires resources beyond the capacity of just Gettysburg Borough, for example, then we can call on other local entities to come and assist. The last mutual aid agreement that is currently in place with the National Park Service dates back to 1988. So this was way overdue for being amended, updated, and made current. In your packet is a draft of that agreement. The National Park Service and Solicitor Eastman have reviewed this document. However, there is a few edits that need to be made because the way this is currently drafted, it's drafted as an agreement between the Department of Interior and Gettysburg Police Department. It really needs to be between the Borough of Gettysburg. Police Department is part of the government here. It's not just a standalone department. And as such, the signatories on the agreement need to be adjusted as well. So just know that this is coming. We can probably put this as an agenda item because it will have to be formally adopted by the council by formal vote, and then we can proceed and get the proper signatures on there. Solicitor Eastman, you'd like to add any context?
I would just note that because it's an agreement of intergovernmental cooperation, it is actually going to require that the borough take formal action in the form of, I think we're going to be able to do it by resolution in the day. It was only ordinance that you could authorize that, but I don't see that this is really legislative in nature, and the Intergovernmental Cooperation Act provides that it has to be done by either resolution or ordinance. So I would anticipate that we're going to be doing this in a two-step process where, and I can imagine that it would be authorized for the preparation of a resolution at the August meeting. Hopefully, within that time period, we'll be able to get the drafting issues resolved, if you will, so that it's very clear that the borough, through its council, is the contracting entity.
Yeah.
And the resolution itself would also take care of, it would specifically indicate who the authorized signatories are on the agreement. It would just kind of bring that together. So I'd anticipate that it's a two-step process. Authorize in August and adopt in September, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there have been historic instances where we have sought the help of, say, the park police, or they have sought our assistance in dealing with law enforcement issues. So having these agreements in place is crucial. Any questions about that? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us, we are through our agenda for the evening, so that takes us back to public comment. This second section is not reserved to items on the agenda. You can speak on any subject. We ask you to use the podium. Please limit yourself to 5 minutes. We need your name and address of residence, please.
Good evening.
Hi.
Crystal Smith, 777 Baltimore Street, for 2 years. And so this past weekend was my 2-year anniversary of living in this amazing community. And coming at it from 2 different angles, I had the opportunity to be a borough manager for going on 5 years, and it was one of the most challenging roles I've ever had. Especially living in the community that you work in, because my full-time job is Homeland Security, going on now 2 decades of what I do now full-time. So that being said, I commend always that role. It's tough. Living in the community that you work, you have to answer all the time to everybody, night, day, you name it. You're always looking, observing, keeping an eye out. It's tough. In fact, get a little anxiety coming to a council meeting again. It's been a while since I was a borough manager. But that being said, the 2 years that I've lived here, it has been incredible. I've watched, I've observed in all the ways that someone as a manager before would see, looking at the way that the lines are the lines are striped, knowing all that goes into striping lines for the crosswalks, etc. So it takes a lot of work. But I wanted to come here tonight after 2 years of observing, looking, listening. I hadn't been to a council meeting yet, but I want to say thank you to what is the harder job than what I thought I had, which was what I did was only overseeing police department, sewer, water, public works, admin. But after my time there and after also living in an area like this amazing community, the hardest job is being a police officer in any size community. And so I wanted to come out tonight so that it is on public record to say thank you to the Gettysburg Borough Police Department for not only being so personable, but so professional, making me feel as somebody that walks around all the time. I mean, I walk loops. I run 6 miles a day around the battlefield. I'm always on foot, observing, appreciative of how safe I feel to have lived here for the 2 years that I've gotten to live here. So again, I just want to say thank you for how safe it makes me feel living in this amazing, vibrant community. And thanks to everybody, because the job is not easy on any end. But I commend them, and as somebody who does triathlons every single weekend and just now learning about that Cooper test, that'd be a struggle for me, and I train a lot. So I was looking at the 1.5 mile time in the push-ups, and I would agree on the fit test too, and would recommend also checking out EMI. They might have training facility capability also, because I teach there sometimes. So thank you again to the police department here, and for everybody that works together, not always easy, to make this such a great place for someone like me to live. That's all.
Thank you for that, and hear, hear. Any other public comment?
My name is Nancy Goodmestead. I own the Shriver House at 309 Baltimore Street here in town. And I just want to say that I think it's absolutely incredible that once again we're standing here talking about parking when you had a procedure that for decades worked perfectly fine. And I think it's very interesting what you think you're going to do with the churches on Chambersburg Street, in that I don't think if I were the Gettysburger or the Buck, that I'd like to see those parking spaces closed off after 8 o'clock at nighttime, and that busiest night of the week on a Saturday night. And then you're just assuming that the police department will not be busy at 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon to come back and get those meter bags. It worked for years. I think what Mr. Wallet said is perfect. Make a contract between you and whoever needs meter bags, and if the contract is followed, honor it. If the contract is not followed, I would pay a fine. I believe they would pay a fine. And I think that would just makes common sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Last chance.
Good evening. My name is Eric Brigger. I'm a recent seminary graduate, and so therefore I live on 464 Springs Avenue, up and over the ridge. I guess my public perspective, I have worked at the Christmas house for almost 8 months now, I think. And I've worked at Christ Lutheran Church for about 18 months, we've said. And it was recently my farewell Sunday yesterday. So, a couple of things. Public theology was my area of expertise at the seminary, and so I do think before anything is super finalized, that we look back on Lemon and Kurtzman court case, as well as other court cases that the Supreme Court and other places have looked at. The Lemon test is what's known based on the Kurtzman and Lemon court case, and that is part of it is drawing the line between infringement and favoritism to religious or places of worship. That was another thing. I do wonder if there's a distinction and that the borough should be careful of addressing places of worship as churches or just keeping it generalized as this place of worship or that place of worship. And also part of the Lemon test did suggest or state that if it's something that's specifically for one church or place of worship, that it also has to be equivalent to all other things. And if there is this other event that gets the privilege of parking, then other events also have to get that fair privilege too. So thank you guys for everything. I will probably move to Ohio in a couple of weeks, but thank you guys for everything.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Stephen Herr, service pastor at Christ Lutheran Church, 30 Chambersburg Street. I just would echo, first of all, appreciation for your service on the Borough Council and as Borough staff, and we appreciate you taking the time to really address this issue. Obviously, it's very near and dear to our hearts, but also I know to other places of worship in the community. We certainly would be very concerned if any limited parking took place on Saturday evening that would impact in any way our neighbors on Chambersburg Street. So we have great relations with those restaurants, and in particular, I would imagine those would be the ones primarily impacted by any restricted parking that would happen 8 o'clock. A lot of folks go to dinner at 8, 9, or even 10. So if that bag option becomes the option, if any way those can be placed after midnight, or we think that that might work. And I understand borough staff may be able to then take them off at 1, but certainly wouldn't want to impact anybody's business, especially as Nancy mentioned on the busiest night of the week, pretty much year round. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned to executive session.